Hi everyone, welcome to our end of financial year webinar on Single Touch Payroll. My name is Claire and I'll be your host for today's session. Just a housekeeping note before we start. All attendees will be automatically muted to minimise background noise, so please pop your questions in the Q&A section and we'll answer these as we go through the presentation. Just a note, we won't be using the chat function, so please only use the Q&A section. Today's webinar is specifically for users who have been reporting to the ATO via Single Touch Payroll for the 2021 financial year. If your business is eligible for an exemption from reporting via STP, we have a separate webinar that will step you through generating payment summaries and showing you how to register and start STP reporting for next financial year. You can register for that on our website. In the webinar today, we'll cover the following. We'll start by taking a look at some relevant employee and business level settings that we strongly advise you to check on before you start your end of year process. Then I'll take you through our end of financial year STP wizard, creating and lodging a finalisation event and notifying your employees. Lastly, we'll take a look at some ATO deadlines and what your employees can expect to see once your end of year has been finalised. Before we get started, I'll just mention that all the information I'm showing you today can also be found in our comprehensive end of financial year guide. You can always access these guides and any of our other end of financial year information using our support widget to search our knowledge base articles. The support widget can be found on any page in the payroll software. However, we will be sending out a follow-up email with the end of financial year guide and a recording of today's presentation. Now, let's get started. We'll begin by taking a look at some of the employee and business details you should check on before you start the end of year process. Starting with employee details, we can check these in bulk using the employee details report. So to access this report, we click on the Reports tab and then Employee Details Report. Here you can add to the display columns any data that you need to check. Some of the details we recommend checking include employee's email address, postal address, tax file number, working holiday maker status, and closely held employee status. Once you've entered these into the search, you can then run the report. And you can easily see on screen any employees that may be missing or have invalid information. Email addresses for your employees are important because you'll be sending notifications to them to let them know that the end of year process has been finalised and that their income statements will be tax ready in their MyGov portal. If an employee has not provided their employer with their tax file number on commencement of employment, the system will generate a special purpose TFN like 1111111. However, it is highly recommended that you try to obtain the employee's actual TFN. If working holiday makers make up part of your workforce, it's essential this setting is correct. Because working holiday makers are taxed differently, incorrect classification may affect their tax return. The closely held option for an employee is applicable for businesses that have closely held employees being paid in the payroll file. This option can be found on the Employees Pay Run Defaults page. Businesses with 19 or fewer employees are exempt from reporting any closely held employees until 30 June this year. From the 1st of July, however, closely held employees must be reported via STP. If you have any closely held employees in your business and they have been marked as closely held from the start of the financial year, This means they will not have been included in any SDP events. So they won't be included in the finalisation event. You will need to generate payment summaries for these employees. However, if you do want these employees included in the STP finalisation, and you absolutely can, you will need to first uncheck this option prior to creating the finalisation event. Please note though, if you have already generated payment summaries for these employees, then they should not be included in the finalisation event. If an employee has not been marked as closely held, then they will have been included in STP events throughout the financial year. So they will be included in the finalisation event, and they cannot have payment summaries generated. The information on this screen can now be downloaded if you prefer to look at it that way. So to do that, you can just go up here to the download button and you'll see the Excel option here. If you do need to make any changes to employee details, do note that the process will vary depending on what you need to update. Our end of financial year guide will have lots more information on how to do this. Now, let's move on to checking business level settings. So we'll just go back to the payroll dashboard and payroll settings. Looking first at ATO settings. For businesses that may be exempt from fringe benefits tax, you'll find the relevant setting here on the ATO settings page. If the exemption applies to your organisation, make sure you've selected Yes from this option. The FBT exemption can also be set at an employing entity level. Let's go there now. If any of your employing entities are exempt, you'll need to go into the employing entity and configure it. You'll see here the setting. If your employing entity is exempt, just select Yes. It's important to ensure that FBT is set up correctly because it will determine whether reportable fringe benefits for each employee is declared as tax-free or taxable in their income statement. If the setting is selected as Yes, all FBT amounts reported per employee for that employing entity will be reported as tax-free. You should also ensure that the business fields for your employing entities are correctly configured. Okay, so next we'll take a look at how your pay categories are set up. So we'll just go there now. In particular, we'll be looking at any pay categories you might be using to pay allowances. If you're paying allowances to your employees that need to be reported separately for STP, you'll need to make sure the pay categories for these allowances have been configured correctly. To check the configuration for these allowances, we need to go into the relevant pay category and check the payment classification. So let's take a look at an allowance I have set up here. Under payment classifications, you can see the different options available. If you select default from here, any earnings paid using this pay category will be attributed to the employee's gross payments. If you select any of the other allowance classification types, which we have here, these will be listed separately in the STP reporting. I'll also just briefly mention JobKeeper and JobMaker payments. If this is something that your business has needed to deal with, there's nothing special that needs to be done with regards to this for the end of year. If you've been using our inbuilt JobKeeper functionality, the pay categories are set up as per ATO specifications. However, if you've been using your own pay categories, you'll need to ensure the payment classification has been set up as allowance other. So you can see that this allowance I have set up is for travel, so I'm going to select this classification here. Please note that the ATO have specific requirements around classifying allowances, and we've got a dedicated article dealing with these for STP, and this will be included in our end of financial year guide. Now we'll take a look at deduction categories. If you have employees that have deductions, there are specific settings that will need to be configured within the deduction category. Here you can see that we now have system categories for a number of deduction types, including salary sacrifice super, workplace giving, union fees, and child support payments. If we look at the payment classification for union fees, you'll see that we've applied the correct classification. This setting will ensure that deductions are being identified correctly. If an employee has salary sacrifice super being deducted, this will need to be reported separately as RESC. These amounts will only appear as RESC if the deduction has been set up as being paid to a super fund. If the deduction is set up to be paid manually or to a bank account, these deductions will not appear as RESC in STP reporting and may have implications for the employee at tax time. If you use our system deduction category, then the correct classification will be assigned and the payment method is locked to paid to a super fund. All you'll need to do is select the employee's super fund. I'll show you here on an employee's file. So we'll just add a salary sacrifice super deduction now. And we'll select the system category here. And you can see that it automatically defaults to paid to a super fund. Then all we have to do is select the employee's super fund and click Save. And that's done. If a salary sacrifice super deduction is added manually to a pay run, you'll also need to make sure that the deduction is being paid to a super fund. I'll just show you in this pay run how we would go about doing that. So we go to Actions, make a deduction, and then we select the deduction category. If we select salary sacrifice super here, all we have to do is select the superannuation fund because it's automatically set to pay to super fund. And then you can just go ahead and enter the amount. Setting up your salary sacrifice super deductions is not only important for making sure the deductions appear correctly in STP reporting, but also when running your super payment reports. This correct setup will ensure that amounts all appear when you go to actually pay the employee's super. We highly recommend you do an audit of your RESC payments before starting your end-of-year process. The end-of-year guide has instructions on how to identify if RESC has been set up correctly and how to fix it if required. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is take a look at the pay runs. So we'll head back to the payroll dashboard and go to the pay runs tab. We need to make sure that all the pay runs for the financial year we're about to process have been finalised. Any unfinalised pay runs will display at the top of the list here. And it's important to note that any data from an unfinalised pay run will not be included in your STP reporting, including your finalisation for the end of the year. So it's really important to make sure any relevant pay runs have been finalised. So you can see here that I've got one that is not finalised. I'm going to click on that pay run. And finalise that. You'll also need to create and lodge the pay event from that pay run as well. You can see here that I have my pay run finalisation set up to create a pay event immediately. So that will create the pay event straight away for me. So we can go ahead and lodge that with the ATO. So we'll just do that now. And while that's submitting, we'll just return to the pay run. Another quick thing to note while we're looking at pay runs is the paid date of a pay run. You need to be aware that the paid date of a pay run is the date that is used to determine the financial year the information in that pay run will be attributed to. This is a handy tip if there are any discrepancies when you are reconciling your end-of-year figures. You'll need to make sure that the paid date of the pay runs you're reconciling fall within the financial year you are reconciling. Okay, so the last thing that we will cover before we start our finalisation event is two-factor authentication. So we'll just head back to the payroll dashboard and then to the payroll settings tab and then to manage users. You'll see the manage two-factor authentication tab. We'll click on that. For users who access payroll directly by KeyPay, it's now compulsory for any payroll user who is submitting Single Touch Payroll reports. You'll notice here that it's automatically enabled for full access users and reporting level users. This means that whenever they log in, they'll be required to follow the 2FA process and verify their details. You can also set up two-factor authentication for pay event approvers. Once this setting is enabled, the pay approver will need to enter a verification code before approving the event. Now that we've covered off the relevant business and employee level settings in the system, we can go ahead and create the finalisation event. So we'll just head back to the dashboard. To access the finalisation event wizard, we need to go to the Reports tab and then to the Single Touch Payroll page. You can see here all the previous pay events and update events listed for the relevant financial year. To start the finalisation, all you need to do is click on the Start Finalisation Process option just here. And this will launch the finalisation wizard. The wizard requires you to complete a number of steps, making sure you review all the information that populates each step as you progress through the wizard. The first step is to select the financial year you wish to process the finalisation for. Here you can see that it defaults to the current financial year. And then select the pay schedule. If you have multiple pay schedules set up in your payroll file, you will need to do a finalisation event for each of the pay schedules. This only includes pay schedules that are actually assigned to your employees as their primary pay schedule. If you have an ad hoc pay schedule set up that you use to pay bonuses, for example, this won't need to be finalised if it's not actually assigned to your employee as their primary pay schedule. You can finalise each pay schedule separately, or you can now select all pay schedules to finalise all pay schedules at the same time. However, do note, this option will only be available to businesses with fewer than 2,000 active employees. We'll have more information available in our end of financial year guide and support articles about how to finalise using this new all pay schedules option. I'm going to select fortnightly. At this point, you'll also see there's a cancel option if you don't wish to continue. But if you do, just click on next and we'll go through to the next step. On this page here, you'll need to confirm that all of this pre-populated information is correct. The finalisation event will populate with all employees attached to the selected pay schedule that have not previously been marked as is final. You'll find more detailed information about the different scenarios here in our end of financial year guide and finalisation support articles. If an employee is not appearing in the finalisation event, do note that they will appear in the Excel year-to-date report for reconciliation purposes. If there are any validation issues in the event, they'll appear at the top here. The validation warning will have the details of what the issue concerns, as well as a link to the area of this system affected by the issue, so you can click through and go straight to the page where you'll need to make the adjustment. If you do require any further assistance or information on the issue, we also have a link here to an article specifically for solving these validation issues. The validation warning I have here relates to the employee's address, and it's telling me that the address is too long. So if I click on the employee's name, this will go straight through to their details page, and we can go and correct the error. So we'll just correct Penny's address and click Save. And then we can head back to the Finalisation wizard and then go to the Actions button and select Refresh Data. And we'll see that that's now corrected. Now that we've attended to the warnings, there are a few other parts of the finalisation event I'll show you. If you need to look at certain employees in the event, you can filter the view by an employee's name or by an employing entity. The headings across the top here will be familiar to you if you've been reporting pay events or update events. However, I'll just point out a couple of notes. In the RESC column, this is where you'll see those salary sacrifice super deductions I showed you earlier in the presentation. And then allowances. This is where you'll see any of those allowances we talked about earlier, where we configured the pay category. If an employee has been employed by more than one employing entity during the year, or they've switched from being a working holiday maker to a non-working holiday maker, they will appear in 2 rows. And I'll just show you in a different business. Here you can see that Jimmy has been employed by 2 different entities during the financial year. And you can see here that John's working holiday maker status has changed during the financial year. Returning back to our current finalisation, we can see the final column here is final. This will be automatically ticked for all employees included in the finalisation event and cannot be unticked. The Is Final option is locked because the entire premise of a finalisation event is to mark all employees as is final. So the ATO is notified that there will be no further payments made for these employees in this financial year. This will then flag that the employee is finalised with the ATO and their income statement will be made available and labelled as tax ready. Now, just above those headings, you'll notice the Actions button. We've already looked at the Refresh Data option here, but there are also 2 reports available that can be used for your end-of-year reconciliation. These are the Excel report and the Excel year-to-date report. The difference between the 2 reports is that the Excel report will show you all the information that has populated the finalisation event, but only for the employees that were included in the event, as you see it on the screen here. The totals in this report will match the totals that appear at the bottom of each column on screen in the finalisation event. The Excel year-to-date report is the report that you'll need to use for reconciliation. The year-to-date report includes, for all employees attached to that pay schedule, payroll data relating to all events successfully lodged with the ATO for this financial year. This includes any employees that had previously been marked as final during the financial year and didn't therefore appear in the finalisation event. We strongly recommend that you perform a reconciliation at this point before you go any further with your finalisation event. We do have an article specifically designed to show you how to do your reconciliation, and this will be included in the end-of-year guide. The last thing to mention on this page is the options you have along the bottom here. These options appear on each page during the wizard as well. There's a next button that will obviously take you through to the next step of the wizard, a back button that will take you to the previous page, and the Save for Later button, which will save the wizard at the page you were on in the wizard. If you use this option, you'll be taken back to the Single Touch Payroll page, where you can then filter the screen for the relevant financial year to find that saved finalisation event. So if I click on that now, and you can see here that this is the finalisation event we've started and not yet completed. To go back into the wizard, you just click on the Continue Finalisation, and it will reopen that event back up to the page that you'd saved it from. From here, we can then click Next to go to the next page. And this is where you'll enter any reportable fringe benefits amounts. If you'd previously entered any reportable fringe benefits amounts for your employees in a successfully lodged pay event, those year-to-date figures will appear in the finalisation event. Just be aware though that these amounts are a year-to-date figure, so if there is already an amount entered here and it needs to be changed, you need to add the total year-to-date amount and make sure that you're entering the grossed up amounts here. If you do have employees that are eligible for fringe benefits amounts, you can enter reportable fringe benefits amounts manually by clicking on the individual pencil icon next to each employee's name and enter the amounts here and click Save. So I'll just show you how now. And we just click Save. If you have a number of employees that do require reportable fringe benefits amounts to be added, we have a bulk import function that you can use. To access the bulk import function, go to the Actions button. You can see here that there are two options. One is to export the RFBA template, and the other is to import that back in again. So we're first going to click on the Export option here. This will redirect us to the Data Extracts page and straight into the Employee Reportable Fringe Benefits extract. We need to make sure we select the correct financial year, and then you can download the spreadsheet. This is what the spreadsheet will look like. You'll notice at the bottom of the spreadsheet there are different tabs for the different pay schedules set up in the business. So do make sure that you're entering the correct information on the relevant tab. This spreadsheet can then be used for each of the finalisation events for the different pay schedules. Each tab will show a list of all the employees that are attached to that schedule. So let's go ahead, we'll select fortnightly, and we're going to give all the employees some fringe benefits there. So then we'll save that, and then we'll go ahead and import it. So back here on the finalisation event, we can now go to the Actions button, and we'll be selecting Import this time. So here we're going to select our file, upload, and then confirm the upload. And then you'll see that the info is now populated with all of these amounts. Once those amounts have been entered, you can then click on Next. This takes us to the last step of the finalisation wizard, which is lodging the event. If you're a registered tax or BAS agent lodging on behalf of a business, you'll need to follow the same process you do with lodging other pay events, where a client authority is required. Now we'll need to read and accept the authorization and declaration and tick the box to acknowledge this. And then we just click on Lodge Finalisation Event. You'll notice here I'm being prompted to enter a verification code. This is because we set up two-factor challenge before lodging a pay event to the ATO. So I'll just click on this one, and then that will send me a code which I'll then enter in. So I'll just enter that code now, and this is just a one-off code, and then click verify. And now you can see that finalisation is complete and the event is being submitted to the ATO. From this point, you can go straight back to the payroll dashboard, or you can go to the event details screen to see the submission processing status. So we'll do that now. So back on the Single Touch Payroll page, on the Lodgement Details tab, we can see that the finalisation event has been successful. The next thing that needs to be done is to send out system-generated email notifications to the employees included in this finalisation event. This is to let them know that their income statement can now be accessed via their MyGov account. To do this, go to the Actions button again, and we can see there's a Send Notifications option. We'll click on this. Once we click here, this will automatically send out emails for all the employees that were included in the event. And you can see on the Lodgement Details tab that those notifications have been sent. So, what will a notification look like? This is what the email will look like, and the body of this email is fixed and can't be edited or customized in any way. You can see here in the email there's a bit of extra information that will hopefully assist employees. There's a link here to create a MyGov account if they don't already have one. There's a short explanation about not being provided with a payment summary now that their income has been reported directly to the ATO. And there's a link where they can access other general information regarding how STP has changed the end-of-year process for an employee. I'll just also mention a couple of things to note with regard to employees accessing their income statements. The ATO only makes the income statement available to an employee via their MyGov account. Employers do not have access to it at all. The income statement will not be available via the payroll employee portal or WorkZone. Previously, employees were able to access their payment summaries from their portal, but this is not the case with income statements. If an employee can't create or access a MyGov account for some reason, they can request their income statement directly from the ATO. Okay, so we'll just head back to the STP page now. Okay, so that's pretty much all that's required to end the financial year via STP using the STP finalisation wizard. I'll just go over a few other items that need to be mentioned. The first is deleting a finalisation event. If you have created a finalisation event in error, it may still be possible to delete it. Note though, you can only delete an event that has not been successfully lodged to the ATO. Once the event has been submitted, there's no longer an option to delete it. I'll show you now how to delete a finalisation event with another finalisation event for a different pay schedule. So we're going to start the finalisation process for a different pay schedule. We're going to do monthly. If you're partway through and you realise you've created the event in error, click on the Save Later option. Now, back on the Single Touch Payroll page, if we open the event here via the event number, as opposed to the Continue Finalisation label, you will see the option to delete the event. So we'll just click on that, and a modal opens. We just click Delete. The next thing I'll show you how to do is an amended finalisation event. If you've already successfully lodged your finalisation event and then found something that needs to be changed, you can make the adjustment. And then in order to update the end-of-year totals with the ATO, you'll need to lodge an amended finalisation event. To do this from the Single Touch Payroll page, you'll see a drop-down arrow on the Start Finalisation Process button. If we click on that, you can see the Create an Amended Finalisation Event option. The process is very similar to the finalisation event process we've just covered. If you create the amended finalisation event, you'll need to select the financial year and pay schedule, and then you'll see a different option appear, which will allow you to select the employees you'd like to include in the amended event. So we're going to amend the fortnightly schedule. We can see there's 4 employees, and we're just going to pick 2 of those. Then we click on Next, and this will create the amended finalisation event with just those selected employees. From here, the process is exactly the same. We'll just click through, and you'll see we just need to go through the authorization again and lodge the finalisation event. So while the amended finalisation event is awaiting ATO processing, we can go back to the Single Touch Payroll page. Here you can see the difference in labelling for a finalisation event and an amended finalisation event. Okay, so a few reminders here on deadlines before we finish up. All businesses need to lodge their finalisation declarations by the 14th of July. Contact the ATO directly for more information if you think you may need more time. Just a note, as of the 1st of July, businesses with closely held payees and micro-employers without a concession must start reporting through STP. We'll have a dedicated recording and support article to step you through the process of reporting closely held employees via STP, and we'll send through links to those to everyone who's registered for today's session. Please note, however, that WPN holders will continue to be exempt from STP reporting until the 1st of July 2022. If you are a WPN holder and you want to start reporting via STP earlier than the 1st of July next year, you will need to use a registered tax or BAS agent to do it on your behalf. This is because the ATO doesn't currently support electronic lodgements for WPN holders. Lastly, a recording will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, and we'll also be sending out a follow-up email to everyone that's attended today. This will include a recording of the presentation, as well as our end of financial year reporting STP guide. This now concludes our presentation. However, we'll stay online for another 5 to 10 minutes to answer any further questions you may have. Just a reminder to pop those in the Q&A. Thanks so much for joining us, and we hope you found it of benefit.